reproduction Game Boy.
Oh, the old school.
Well, it's got 200 games on it.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Oh yeah, I've seen that. It has all. It's like the emulator. It has all of them. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool.
It's a little slower, truthfully,
but it does the
but
job.
it's got Super Mario. Now, I own the real version, the reproduction version. It's like a little rectangular one.
Yeah.
And I keep it in my back pocket with like it's a USB-C charger, but it's only Super Mario. It's like only Super Mario and like Donkey Kong.
Gotcha.
But this one
has
and I think it was like $90 or something for that one. This one's like $25 and has like 200 games.
That's pretty cool. We are live, by the way. Just
as sorry.
These things are weird because you have to like time it, so you're good. But anyways, we are live with Justin from Amps and Sound, just having a cool hangout, chill chat time, and kind of Q&A. So, Justin, what's new with you?
Well, everybody,
the cool video games.
Everybody, happy holidays. I was sort of sharing that I really enjoy one of the threads I enjoy on whether it's Discords or on all the different forums I'm a part of is the what's in the box, or also someone's newest builds or newest systems, right? And that's because you get to see someone's thinking or someone's newest discovery. And so Tyler's got a shirt on it that's got an SNES controller on it. And then we went on to this whole tangent about like, I bought the SNES and NES reproductions that Nintendo did like 3 years ago that have HDMI connectors. So I bought them for, basically 2 games. I bought because I wanted Super Mario Brothers that had Yoshi, and I wanted classic Mario Brothers. So I had to buy one of each game console,
as you do,
to have 2 games.
I mean,
and then when exactly. And when I fly, and so like that would be like a cool discovery for somebody. And then when I fly, I have the portable Super Mario controller they came out with like a year ago or 2 years ago. That's like a rectangle that was like $100 just to have Super Mario Brothers, or just to have Mario Brothers on it, but the graphics are really tight. But we were sharing that I got this. I did it was like a white elephant gift for my. Hold on a second. Let's see if I can turn it down. I did it as a white elephant gift for a family function, and no one really wanted my white elephant gift but me. So I won my own white elephant gift back, which was
it's a shock. Like that thing's badass. Like why would you not?
Well, so the husbands wanted it. But then, like the younger children, they had to explain to their wives that the younger children wouldn't be getting to play it; that they would be playing it, and so then it was like nixed.
Got it. I'm tracking.
So like here's an example of something I think is super cool. $25, you get a reproduction Super Nintendo with a rechargeable lithium-ion battery and charger with 200 Super Nintendo or Game Boy games on it.
Yeah.
So like. I think things like these kinds of conversations are super cool because like I have some new speakers that I'm really in love with. I got a pre that's, I think is kind of cool, and the thinking behind that. I got a $25 Game Boy. I think my Game Boy is pretty cool, truthfully.
Agreed.
Tyler's rocking the newest, greatest EMFs that exist, plus some cable that is, Tyler's got cable that's it's very special
Viking.
too.
Yeah, this has that. This actually is really cool, man. I don't know if I can get this to pop, but it has this opal. Like it's a Viking weave cable. And dude, this is jewelry. Like this is proper jewelry. Like this is jewelry grade, like split here. Like it's gorgeous. My biggest toy from last year was this though. This is my favorite and biggest toy I got for myself was the lovely Leica camera. So. And I even have, speaking of video games, it's a bit other.
That's awesome.
It's a bronze, I think it's bronze. Yeah, bronze Space Invaders.
Not even plastic. You went with bronze.
Yeah, it was expensive, man. It was an artisan made thing. Yeah.
that looks like all of $250.
It wasn't that bad, but it was definitely up there for a little. It's literally just this chunk of metal with like a cool little close my there you go. Come on, there you go. It's just a chunk of metal.
They say, when your stereo's gotten to a really, really, really serious place is when you stop telling people how much you've spent on
Yes.
it. when,
It's
when, when
money.
someone when someone goes like, how much, like when someone tries to reconstruct the cost, it's like that's not really the relevant question. Like that doesn't matter.
Yeah.
That's not what this is about.
How does it sound? It sounds lovely, right? You enjoy this. Let's move away from the It's dangerous, man. Yeah, I just had that discussion a while back with a couple other people about that, like where it's just like, I don't know, people, and then people want to know, and it's like, and so that's part of why, like, whenever I talk about like any of the gear, I try not to. I think I mentioned it in my most recent one I'm going to put out hopefully tomorrow or this weekend, but I don't like to talk about the cost of a thing, right? Because of that, because there's a factor there where it's like, I don't want that to color it, but it does color it, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So when I talk about my impressions of things or my thoughts on gear, things are expensive, like it's just across the board. And then at a certain point, the value or the cost of a thing doesn't matter anymore, because now it's just it's differentiating between flavors and preferences, not how much it costs at a certain point.
Well, like at some point, I want to do a video. Like I have probably, I got 3 speakers that are sort of like my big interests right now, which are like big Altecs, which I got a big Altec behind me.
Mhm.
JBLs, which I got a JBL next to me that I just got that I'll show you guys. And then like my Corn Scalas. And it's like a Cornwall is an $8,000 pair of speakers.
Mhm.
The JBLs are an $8,000 pair of speakers, and some Altec 604s done right are like 6 to 8 grand, and those are all big kid choices. And right, and very
You're in
few people
luxury
will.
item world now, not
Well, very
necessarily.
few people would own 3 or 5.
Mhm. Well,
And
yeah.
most people would own 1, and that's really great. And the differences between each of those, I don't think, or like a Tannoy, like people would have like a Tannoy Arden.
Mhm.
Those are all like really, really awesome choices. And I don't think, as you said, it's like they're all so qualitatively good. It actually is a question of like sonic and visual presentation,
Yes, and it's funny is you
or
can actually
sonic and visual preference.
preference. Yes, I know what you're saying, but yeah, just that, like and that's at every stage of the journey too. Like you could say things at I mean, I've noticed that, like things at like I have this thing right here, like this thing it's the DX7 Pro from Appos topping thing. It's a DAC
Mm-hmm.
amp thing. And this sits in that like $500 to $800 range for like a DAC amp, but like everything at that $500 to $800 range is it's a variance. It's same. It's the variances in that level of, you know what I mean? Like it's just a preference at that point. Like me, I don't like ESS Saber DACs or ESS DACs. Like I just don't. They just don't fit my preference. I don't think they're bad. I just know they don't fit with what I like. And I've heard some that are good that I've actually liked, but it's rare, very rare for me to actually properly like an ESS DAC versus say an AKM or an R2R. I much prefer R2Rs, or that's
Well, I mean, as like a separate question, to some degree, this is outside of my wheelhouse, but ESS is actually a really interesting company if done correctly, and you buy if you're not an OEM house.
Mhm.
So the question is like, is the company that's selling you the DAC a commercial front for an OEM house, right? So they're a commercial presence, but really it's built. They're selling a white labeled product that was built by an OEM.
Yeah.
ESS, for everybody who owns a developer kit, lends the developer development time with their staff.
Mhm.
And ESS, I know somebody who has an ESS developers kit, and the amount of real engineering thinking and quality engineering that they give you access to,
Mhm.
that you could never have as a small or medium manufacturer,
Oh, it's mind-boggling.
it is absolutely astounding. And so, like, um, if you're a small or medium company that's decided to build a DAC because you want to build a quality product that's going to be like low margin, low volume, but you've decided you want to build a nice product,
Mhm.
and so you've bought the dev kit and have ESS supporting you. They can do things for you that are like off the script, off the menu, and give you filters
Mhm.
that are gentle or significant and integrate them in ways that are not just like loading filters through like a
Mhm.
toggle switch. Like they're fully embedded. You never ever, like, they're actually part of the DAC. They're like
Mhm.
a fully integrated solution, and
And
they
I've
sound
heard those.
different. Those
They sound
solutions
completely
sound
different.
different.
Yeah. And I know exactly what you're talking about. And like I have heard an ESS setup where it was like that, where it's like they knew what they were doing, they knew what they wanted out of the deck. They specifically were like built it, purpose built, like you're talking about. Like they actually took the time to really dive into the settings. And in which it seems like there's this an insane amount, like you just said. Like there's just so much you can do with these things. But that being said, I for whatever reason, like the baseline, whenever there's just they're, I don't, and I'm going to sound harsh here, but I don't think that they're just slapping them in these toppings or these, most iterations of them, or I think they're fine. I think they do what they need to do and they're a good DAC. I just know preference wise, like when I listen to one and I go A/B to something that's not that, I prefer the other one, if that makes sense. But that's
Well,
just
I
me.
mean, like, like if you guys want an interesting sort of like tangent, like if you start listening to lectures or podcasts or live streams from people who do mixing
Mhm.
people. So
Oh
I
yeah.
had an
Mhm.
argument with a friend that he was apparently drunk in the middle of the night and took really great offense to something I said. So take what I say carefully, because apparently I
Say it
pissed
ain't
him off,
so.
and I pissed him off in spades. But I think what I said was in large measure probably correct, which is that mixing engineers have an understanding of sound,
Mhm.
the construction of sound at one of the highest levels. So they
Mhm.
understand tone and sound really, 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 really well. And so they do things that are like called like de-essing. So they like
Mhm.
de-sibilance mixes,
Mhm.
which changes how they sound through digital sources,
Yep. Yeah, I have a
which is
couple
like,
of buddies that are like the engineers.
so
Yeah.
there'll sometimes be a mix that's for digital sources versus a mix that's for records,
Mhm. Mhm.
and there are differences,
Yeah.
and if you heard the two side by side, you'd hear the differences and be like, oh. um
But they're looking for different things though. And that's I think I know where you're going with this a little bit. You're basically ESS is really good for that. Like that's the one thing I was kind of talking about when I was talking about this when I did the video for this was like the detail is very sharp. The detail
mhm.
and it's the treble is very forward. And it's not that that's a bad thing. I just when I listen, I think I even said this, my preference is to be a little more mellow, chill. I want to lean back, I want to relax more. I don't, and it's a subtle thing, like in the DAX. Like DAX are subtle. This isn't something when I'm talking about differences, it's it's not like a punch to the face versus a tap on the head, like it's that they're
Mhm.
subtle, but they're once you hear them, it's you hear them. But I don't know. That's my take on it. So is that what you're kind of saying though? Like,
Yeah. Well, and just sort of understanding those gentle differences is important to understand sort of where DACs are coming from,
mhm.
what are they trying to accomplish?
That's also true. Like what's the angle? What are you trying to, yeah, that's smart. And that's the thing. Are you a prosumer product, or are you a consumer product, or are you a
Mhm.
pro product? Like there's a bunch of, and then there's a whole bunch in between all that.
Well, I mean, like, why does RME offer, like, how many bands are in their EQ?
This one specifically, there's
Sure.
none. This one's just all fur and like
Well, the fact that you can load a fur filter into your DAC.
it's impressive. Yeah.
Look, the fact that you can load a fur filter into your DAC should tell you
Speaking of,
that is that the ADI?
yeah, the ADI. So I
Right. The
mean,
fact that you can load a fur filter into the DAC should tell you that it is an extraordinarily precise piece of equipment that is
yeah,
unforgiving as F.
true.
Because if you want it to forgive something, you can load a layer on top of it.
It's essentially pre-done EQs at the end of the day. Okay.
Mhm.
Wait, would you? I mean, I'm curious, like your thoughts on this, Justin. For the furs, like these are the like
Mhm.
the linear, the slow roll off, the fast roll off. That's what I'm talking about. That's what we're talking about. Would you consider that an EQ profile, or do you consider that a filter?
What's the difference?
Touche. I mean, because I'm not an EQ guy. Like, I don't.
Well, no, I mean, like I'm a Rune guy. The fact that you can load a fur filter directly into Rune now,
Oh yeah, that's
so
true.
you can take. So there's an abundance of software coming online now that exists now and will exist more in the next 18 months to 36 months, where you can take REW and measure your room and
Mhm.
load and then generate room correction based fur filters.
Yeah. I mean, it is EQ. Fur is EQ at the end of the day. Like, it just
Right,
doesn't
but you
feel
can
like EQ because it's like a preset EQ.
well, but it's how many taps are there to the EQ? It's like
That's also true.
saying I guess it's like saying, is a chord DAC a delta sigma DAC? Well, sorta, but how many taps does it have? Well, okay, so it's
A
so it's it's
bazillion.
it's delta sigma to how many taps?
Yeah. With a couple 100,000 at the very least. So it's some insane number. I remember that. It's like,
Well, so right, so like a fur filter is I think an EQ the way an algorithm I guess is like to AI.
yeah, yeah. Like that's why I get like you're not personally going in and like beep 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 like the EQ in some of these, but like by loading a fur, you could actually create a fur if you could, and then get access to the load and load it in, right? With some of these stacks, have these features, or if you have
Well,
room.
I'm just saying, like these fur filters are having the ability to make these micro. I mean, like they're micro adjustments that you can make. You know, potentially hundreds or thousands of micro adjustments,
Mhm.
like quarter decibel adjustments on specific frequencies.
Which is nuts. And then that's nuts. Like, at the end of the day.
Well, but think about the amount of processing power that we now can execute to do that
Yeah.
in that little box you just lifted.
And this light, it's tiny. Like this thing's small. Like this
Right.
is, I mean, and like,
Well, I meant the ADI that does it, but
oh
like
yeah,
same
this one,
idea.
same idea. And the ADI, I think this ADI is, I think five. Is it 5 band? I think it's a 5 band. But that's the ADI, and the same. I mean, same thing. In fact, I think the new ADIs. This is the AKM ADI, and the new ones are
Mhm.
all ESS Pro. So I mean, take that for what it's worth too. And I love this. This is stupid good, man. I mean, this is one of those things where you just can't get rid of it because it just does so much, and it's such a
Right. Well, but I'm just saying, like, the fact that you can take like a like generate fur filters now, like there are fur filters that exist now for your headphones. There are fur
Mhm.
filters that exist for the LCD fives over there or the HD 800s, and you load them up, and they can be flatter. They can roll off a specific frequency spike that's a nominal resonance
Mhm.
of the driver that we don't like.
Yeah, it's fair. What's funny is I'm pretty sure my audience is like the guys that they're probably not the most EQ, but maybe you guys are. I don't know. What do you guys think in the chat? Like, are you guys EQ folks?
Oh, I'm not an EQ. I mean, I don't own an EQ, but I
Yeah.
mean, I still find it an interesting
I find
idea.
I think there's same thing, same. So like I find EQ is a necessary thing. I think it's a good thing to have. I just personally find it to be a barrier. I have ADHD, so if I had EQ, I would be spending so much time EQing and not actually listening to music, which is what I want to be doing. I want to listen to music. I don't want to be tweaking. You know what I mean? I only have so much time in the day, and I don't know. That's my bigger take on it, I think. EQ, sorry, specifically.
I mean, like for me, it's the question of, does it get me closer to the music or does it get me closer to the performance?
And those are very two distinct things.
100%. And so rarely am I interested in the performance over the music.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And actually, Mike, what's up, brother? Mike O. He says, I tried, and I think I made the music worse I'm assuming by EQ. And that's my take too. Like every time even someone else's profile were like, this is the greatest profile ever for your headphones. And I'd plug that in and I'd get it to it always felt like, even though it might have fixed something here, it took away here, here, and here. You know what I mean? Like there's always a give and take.
Well, like, so in my experience, I've had some mild experience with, I've had a lot of experience with room correction. I'll say this, which is similar to you.
I think I like that. I think room correction is actually, to me, more important, especially in the stereo world.
Right, but I don't find it wholly different, because the question of like the fingerprint of the processing. So, like in room correction, as an example, like when I would, so very often in shows, when you do a show, people, maybe 50% of rooms use some form of room correction where they tell you it or not.
Well, they would have to, especially in different shows. Who knows?
They don't have to, but they don't tell you.
Well, I mean, yeah. Fair, touche.
Number two, if you haven't tried room correction at very, very high levels, even with like cinema, people will bring in cinema processors. I speak from, I've seen behind the curtain. If you get out of the music path, if you manage from 200 hertz down, you can still make it sound like music.
Okay.
If you fiddle with anything above 200 hertz, you will suck the life out of the music.
And maybe that's why I always felt that way. Like I always felt like there's, and then Marius mentioned it too. He's like, you lose resolution and transparency is what he's saying. But I mean, I think that's what I always noticed. I always felt like there's too much taken away from what I was gaining. I don't know.
I wonder. I always think it's more like there becomes time anomalies.
Maybe that's what it is.
Or like phase questions between different frequencies.
Maybe that's what it is. Like it just felt like there was something. It didn't sound right to me. Like I couldn't really put my finger on it, but it always just sounded off. Like there's always something about it that made me feel like there was things taken away from the experience. And so I think that's where I was like, not for me. So, but I don't know. I think it's fascinating. I think it's definitely still a thing. And it's free. So why not play with it? Right. So.
Well, I mean, I guess my company, or like my thinking, is sort of the counterpoint to that. The reason why not to play with it's like sort of like playing with dark magic versus light magic, right?
It's also true. Agreed.
The reason why you don't play with dark magic is not because it's not powerful. It's because it's corrupting.
Yeah. Dude, I love that analogy, man. That's so good. EQ is dark magic. I need to make a shirt.
Well, no, I mean, or you could think of it like this way. It's like, it's not that anger isn't really a powerful focusing tool for us all to use. It's that it embitters and blinds.
Yeah.
Like anger can energize and focus and motivate.
Like I want to listen to some gnarly death metal while I'm working out, or some hardcore rap or something, hip hop, and get pumped. But it's not a good listening thing for driving in LA traffic at 4 or 5 p.m.
or like processing your feelings, or life planning, or thinking about bad shit that happened before that you got to work through.
You don't want to be at Christmas dinner with your whole family listening to death metal. I mean,
Right. No, but I mean, I think like to make it take a like a lighter stint on it. Yeah, it's like dark magic. You know, it's like it's powerful, but it
It is
is
corrupting. It
it is
takes a little bit of
corrupting.
your soul a little bit.
Well, I mean, because I think like that. So it's like so. So what's your alternative, Justin? It's like, all right. So here's Justin's alternative: choose things that are organic
Mhm.
and live with it. Live with the outcome, even if it ain't perfect.
And that's key. That's clutch right there. Yeah, I think so. That
Yeah,
makes sense.
and I mean, now there is then like after me, there's that next level of people turning to analog as like a shrine, the shrine of analog, you know, like
Mhm.
making everything um
We're gonna hurt some
almost like
feelings here.
a tea ceremony.
Yeah, dude. Yes, like, dude. Like, I always talk about that too. Like, and isn't that vinyl is the best sounding in the world? Sorry, I don't mean to offend
It's
anybody.
not. No,
It's
it's
not.
not.
It's not. But like, there's another factor to this though, where it's like, but it's the tea ceremony. It's the sorry, my screen just brightened and I just got like blasted. Um, but the process of grabbing a record, picking a record, like you go to your collection and you pull it out, and you have to pull it out of the sleeve. You have to be careful. You don't put your fingerprints on. You know, it's a process of that. And then you go and you walk to the table and you put it on. And you put the
The
weight on it.
intentionality of
Oh,
it.
the intention, and then you intentionally listen to that album, like, and you
In order.
dedicate time
In the
in order.
order that
Yeah,
it was.
it's telling a story, and you can't skip. You can't. I mean, you could, but it'd be a pain in the ass, and you're risking a lot. But like, the intentionality is it. That's the word, and it's like that is such a rewarding process. Just like a tea ceremony, just like making a, like at the end of it, you're just like, oh, that was so like, just brings you down, and not in a bad way, brings you down into like a mellow, like
Chill
focused,
vibe.
chill vibe. Yeah.
Right. So like, well, because it kind of comes back to like, you know, the question of like non-over like, so like if you back into the question different, like what DAC would Justin choose? Well, the DAC I choose truthfully tends to be the one with an Ethernet port because I have an axe to grind on DACs without Ethernet ports.
I know. I picked this up over the time.
Um, but you know, I also think that there's something interesting to be said about like non-oversampling DACs because the question, like, I mean, I think like there's this duality of like greater and greater access to high resolution music. And I think that's super, super cool. And you want to be able to process that high resolution music at the original bit rate, the bit depth that you receive it in, right? So on one hand, you want access in theory to being able to process at high bit depth. But then there's the question of like, are you losing things by oversampling? You know, like, are you an HQ player guy? Are you are you oversampling to 768?
See, and it's funny. Everyone that I've talked to that does the HQ player thing, they always play with it for like a couple months at most. And there's a few that do it like permanently, but generally I've seen the people that do that tend to be like in love with it and say it's the most amazing thing ever, right? But then they stop and then they go back to doing whatever they were doing before. Does that make sense? Like, I don't know.
Yep.
Like, and I want to think, and this is something I always talked about before going into, I always called it my barriers, the barriers of entry into my sitting here, putting headphones on, putting a record on, and listening to music. How many barriers do I have to go through? Do I have to turn on this, turn on that, play with that, do this, EQ that, make this happen before I'm actually relaxing and listening to music? The less of that I have to do, the happier I am personally.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that rings true for more people than they would like to admit. Like the people that praise, HQ player, that kind of stuff. I think, or I don't know, maybe I'm projecting, so I can't say that, but like, I think that at the end of the day, the less barriers, the better to enjoyment.
Well, like, so not to like bring us back to like pivoting to the discussion point, but like,
Mhm.
why did I build
Or
a
free
pre?
flow.
I built a pre in some ways to be able to give people who have personal audio a bridge, right? Because the pre isn't really big enough to be consumable typically by a two-channel audience. It does everything a two-channel audience wants,
Mhm.
but of its physical size, and it does it at the right level of performance and all that good stuff, but, like, it's physically intended it was designed to be consumable or valued by people who are space conscious.
Okay, I get
You
it. Mhm.
and so, like, if you're always listening in the near field and always have your stereo is 3 to 5 feet away from you at all times, um, having labels on the switches, nothing wrong with SPL. Like, I mean, I think they're a really amazing company, but like they're sort of like the kabuki mask. You know, there used to be like the kabuki stereos of the Japanese stereos of the 70s with all the dials.
Mhm.
SPL monitors and whatnot are kind of like the modern iteration of that. They got like a switch and a knob for every function.
Oh, it's so good, Justin. So good. Give me that
No, I'm not.
tactile.
I mean, it's super cool, and I'm not knocking it for the like. I understand that as a thought, but
Yeah.
I also think like if you're going to be 3 feet from that every day, I would rather stare at something more like this, where like, I mean, you
Yeah.
may not even want it with my name on it, you know, like, you know, and the idea was like on off volume
Mhm.
input. And the idea was like everybody's got a DAC, and whatever DAC you have, like whether it's a Modi or a Bifrost or bigger, you know, you have your DAC. Cool, the
Yeah.
question's been answered. But how do you bridge into that larger world where like you bought a set of caps and maybe you bought an Ager or a Vidar, but now you want a table because like you're tired of like you had a hard drive crash and you lost your music, or you're tired of renting music from Tidal. Yeah, it's dope and you can listen to everything you want, but you never really have your library. But you want like every album you and your dad listened to. You want to have that same 30 albums that were you and your dad listened to. And so having a turntable gives you access to that. So you buy a Project $350 turntable. How do you integrate that with your DAC easily?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you just have a well, with the pre, you have to. You have to have a pre.
Right. And so, well, that's what this idea came from,
Mhm.
was everybody sort of graduating to the idea of like, hey, Justin, so many of your products do speakers or headphones, right?
Mhm.
But I want to do more than just my DAC. What do I do? And so
Pre.
this was the idea.
That's just a
This
pre.
was the idea. This was the idea behind it. And so that's why it's got a phono stage in it. And yeah, it's adjustable, but like any moving magnet cartridge works with this. Like it's set it,
Mhm.
forget it, it's done.
Fair.
And so if you buy like the project entry level $350 turntable, your answer is done. You have a complete like ready to rumble system,
Yeah.
playable through your headphones if you wish it, or playable through your speakers if you have it. And
And
that's a pretty cool answer.
and this kind of I want to actually touch on that too, like the whole process of actually before we no, let's dive into it. We'll go into questions. So I'm going to go into the questions in the chat in a little bit, but let's dive into this topic real quick. And the topic is separates.
Huh?
Like having separate. So having a pre, having and like so for instance, you sent out the Kinsey with no volume pot.
Mhm.
And so like and I didn't have a Kinsey with volume pot to go back to back, but comparing it off of memory and went back and watching my video on it and on the OG Kinsey video, it did feel like there was something that made that better. Like, and I couldn't quite like it felt like that maybe like there was I don't know, like it felt like it was I had more control over it. I felt like there was just little things, it wasn't like a massive change, but it was
Well,
definitely I noticed.
so like just to talk about like the synergy for a second, because like
Mhm.
there's a concurrent review that part-time audiophile's working on with the same pre and a Jinx done the same
Mhm.
way.
Mhm. Okay.
And they'll come to their own conclusion.
I'm better than
You,
him.
I'm sorry. No, I didn't hear. I didn't.
I said
didn't
I'm
hear
better.
That.
I'm better than.
Oh no, I mean,
I was joking.
Okay,
I'm purely
sure.
sorry. I was joking.
So the question of separates. Why do separates? I mean, I think like if you look at like the Mogwai SE, which is sort of like my best-selling product,
Mhm.
it is an exceptionally good product that serves the needs for like everything. And the only way to make it better and super cool and really, 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 really timeless is to remove the volume pop, because then it's like this multi-function power amp.
Yeah.
And you can have your DAC do volume control if you want dithering to do that, or you can get a preamp to do it if you want gain function. So let's just back up and make one statement. Single-ended, single gain stage amplifiers
Mhm.
to control noise have a single gain stage. By product of having a single gain stage, never really have enough voltage swing in all probability to have the dynamic resolution that they should. It's always this balancing act of voltage swing versus noise floor.
Mhm.
If you add a second gain stage to them, then you're chasing noise and you never win that fight.
Mhm.
And so no one does it that way.
Yeah.
Everybody's single-ended, single gain stage is how it's done, unless you're talking like big power,
Big power, yeah.
like 845s and things like that.
Mhm.
And so every single-ended amplifier would dramatically benefit from a active gain stage,
And this actually
i.e. a preamplifier with a gain stage.
With gains, and that's what Marius was asking about as well. He was asking if there was a gain. Like it's not passive. This is not a passive. This is
No,
this has power. This is
but
power. This is giving.
This has a. So some pre's have like crazy stupid gain, like
Mhm.
a gain of 12 or more.
Mhm.
This is a gain of 2, so 1 volt in, 2 volts out.
Mhm.
You know, because my amps in general don't need more than that. Let's assume for half a second that, or it's a gain of like, technically I guess it's a gain of 2.2.
Mhm.
So
Math.
if you think, if you're like me and you believe that most DACs might hypothetically lie about their output voltage,
Mhm.
might hypothetically lie. And so they say they do 1.2 volts out in single-ended mode,
Mhm.
but they probably, when measured in true RMS, do 800 volts out.
Mhm. So you need that extra boop to get to where you think.
So 800 volts in to a pre gets you 2.2 volts out. 2.2 volts is well past the what's needed to get any of my amps to full juice, to
Mhm.
full power. And now you got dynamics up here. Now you got enough throttle,
Mhm.
to push the sled.
Yeah.
And then the question is, what input tube do you choose to sort of control noise floor
Mhm.
and to modulate the volume control, like you had to do?
Yeah. That was
because I sent it with the wrong tube.
Well, and it wasn't. It's just more like I think. Because I think that was the tube that I had on the original A3S, but with the pre, it just made it was like I was like, and it wasn't bad. I just had like I could be. I was like, like, and it was like, okay, I have no play in this volume to get to to blow your ears out.
And it's an interesting thing. Like if you look at like on the bigger amps, if you take anything of my amps that have a stepped attenuator, the stepped attenuator has a very different tapering of the volume control, so it feels like, oh shit, it's not loud to like I'm at like the very end, it's not as powerful. It's not that. An Alps volume control has what's called an audio taper, so it's like louder at the beginning, less loud at the end. A stepped attenuator is the same level of attenuation per click,
which is awesome.
And so it's like 5%, 10%, 15%, 20, and so like on the big amps, if you go all the way out, you actually bypass the volume control and it becomes like a bypass function. And so you can use a pre with them
Yeah, I've had that where you had to turn a certain volume level to get to where where you could pre, and then you had a pre, and it doesn't have as much of a. Here's the thing I would say, like the problem with the stepped attenuator versus having like a more finite is you have that it's just that you lose control. You lose control over the steps. So let's say you have something that's you click twice or just once, and it's like there's no happy medium between those two steps. It's
Right.
like, oh.
Well, so one of the things like people like aren't as familiar with is like these are class A amplifiers, right?
Mhm.
And so which means that they're actually producing full power 100% of the time.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're like, oh, well, but it sounds louder with this, you, what a volume pot is to these amplifiers is another way of saying that is input attenuation.
Mm-hmm.
So like think of it like the shutter or the iris on your lens, the light iris on your lens to the film or to the
Yes.
photo sensor,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
right?
The
And
old distance
so,
thing. Yeah.
right, uh, just because you need more throttle on it, like you're feeling it on the back end, it's always producing 100% power right at startup.
Yeah.
You just haven't seen, you have not ungoverned it enough.
That's key. Yeah. You haven't ungoverned it. That's actually a good way to say it. Yeah. You haven't released it. You
Yes,
haven't, it's being held back and you haven't fully opened the pipes, let it just run wild.
but the thing about a pre is like, so like a buffer, typically a buffer is a 1-to-1 voltage. There's no change in voltage if I remember correctly, right? But there could be a slight bump. Is it a, yeah, buffer is a 1-to-1 in voltage, but potentially a slight increase in current. Kind of helpful for solid state amps.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So buffers are sort of useful for like the Nelson passes of the world. That's why he makes this thing called like the B1 buffer. You can build it on DIY audio.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It's a useless idea for a tube amp. Tube amps like voltages.
Yeah.
And then there's this idea called unity gain, which is 1-to-1 for voltage and current. Again, useless for tube amps. Tube amps like voltage increases. If you give a tube amp more voltage, 1 volt in, 2 volts out into its input, you will have it feel like it gave it a supercharger. It will have gotten some testosterone. It will have gotten some come on, what's the juice? Give me the
It's a
latest
juice.
in
You
juice.
got juiced or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah. It'll get some special stuff. Grow some hair, Um, and so its dynamics change. Its immediacy changes. Its forward edge on things. It's less relaxed, truthfully.
Yeah.
And you may not like that, or you may like that. I generally like it feeling slightly more present and slightly more forward tipped.
And I think it really depends on your listening, what the gear you're listening with, and also your, like you said, your preferences. And I will say, like when you put a pre or even your step, like the step up boxes, I remember at New York City Can Jam, we did the step ups on the Nautilus and the Red October. And then we also did with the Kinsey. Red October didn't really mess with. I think that's right. It was the Kinsey. Was it the Kinsey? And then the Nautilus, I think we played with it a little bit. But then we took them off and we mixed and matched a little bit, as I recall. But I remember there being like a definitive moment where it was like, and you do it for people and you watch them while they're listening. And it was like, you could see them kind of like go, like their irises would kind of spread. Like, you could see this immediacy. There's a presence that just, it's like you go from here to here, like or I guess we reverse that. It's like from here to here, like you're just, the presence is like not overwhelming, but it's like more immediate. It's more powerful. It's powerful because it is more powerful.
Well,
But
so I guess I mean,
the
one of the
presence is
things,
more like not in your face, but just more meaty. There's more meat to the bone, I guess.
I don't know that everybody would agree with my characterization. Maybe I get, you know, I don't know that this is always a truism, but if you assume for half a second, let's use the Mogwai as a good example. The Mogwai is probably a good example for this characterization. The Mogwai is an extremely intimate amplifier.
Yeah, it was one of my favorites, honestly.
So where, like, I wouldn't use this characterization for like the Novelist or even the Bigger Ben, but the Mogwai is like 5 feet from the performer kind of amplifier. You are very close to the performer.
Yes.
The pre sort of gives you that same idea, and the argument structure for that is that, like, speakers win for imaging. Headphones don't win for imaging. You know, they just don't.
Yeah. And so
they win for trueness of tone. They win for you know, like they win for everything else but not imaging.
Yeah,
right?
I say they're more like I would say like headphones are intimacy, and speakers are presence. Speakers are place. Like and by place I mean like transitioning from being I'm sitting here listening to headphones to I can close my eyes and I'm in a place.
I'm in the place. And I think the pre brings my amplifiers, largely as single-ended devices, right, into being more intimate. Just like the Mogwai SC brings headphones to being even more intimate. It takes like the sus to being like the fucking the darn microphone.
Yeah.
You know, and so someone had said to me, it's like it's the microphone spit and all.
Yeah, you hear the bubble pop off of a lip, or like not bubble pop, you know what I mean, the lip separating pop, like yeah.
Right.
There's an intensity there. Yeah, like there's a intensity, like I'm gonna do a double I here, an intimacy, intense intimacy with that.
Which you know, I really like. I love musicality more than technicality, but I like the idea of intense. But I also like the idea of intense intimacy.
You want your ears licked? I got it.
Yeah. Well, I was gonna go with like vulgarity, and I took it back from vulgarity to going, I want a Hershey s'mores.
Yeah,
perfect. But like, if I was gonna do a s'mores, I need my Hershey chocolate to be half melted. I don't want the cold candy bar version. I want I need my candy bar to be half.
The chocolate needs to be oozing over the marshmallow.
100%.
So we were in Vegas, and they had this Hershey. Went to the Hershey store, and they had a s'mores, and they put this hot molten marshmallow, and they put a Reese's cup in this marshmallow, and it smashed, and it melted, and oh dude, they had the peanut. Oh.
So the point of the pre for everybody was 2 things: to give you access to being able to use a turntable, an analog turntable. You know, an analog, a turntable in an analog sense without like a digital pre, right? And to give you that intimacy and drive function that a solid state, that a pre would give you to my single-ended amps. You know, that's what this was about.
And you saw so the reason you even did this, let's talk about that a little bit.
Well, I mean, look, to be, because I try to be really transparent with people. The other reason is, look, I have been pushing the development of my 2-channel more and more, and 2-channel you look less interesting as a 2-channel company if you don't make a pre. Even if they don't want to buy your pre, if it don't exist, you look less interesting. And I've been building this pre, you know, and putting it into use in some studios, and putting it into use in like private, like putting it to use for a long time, for like 15 years. And it's like, this is what I use. And so this is, you know, And what's
This is just
brutal is, I mean, I think you were Can Jam New York. I think I was pissing vinegar over this issue. You know, like I hired a company to help me sort of develop this pre into like an all-in-one solution on a single PCB with a remote. And I got told by the company, like, hey, you owe us $15,000 and you'll never own the design and you can rent it from us and we will always get a percentage of your sales.
which is bananas.
Right. And I was like,
As a small business. Yeah.
I was like, yeah, we're never going to do that. That's a beautifully sweet offer. You can, yeah, no.
Excuse me, but even beyond too much soda pop, but even beyond that, like you've been in the DIY scene, what, 20 years plus?
Yep.
So you've been making, I mean, let's put it this way, how many variations of your speakers did you make in 2022?
Oh, in 2022. I thought you meant like in total.
No, could that be a lot?
Completed or
just half completed. I mean, I've seen the posts, I've seen the things. They're looking like what, 3?
No,
4,
well, that's not representative. So the problem is like I have an amp company and then I have a crack addiction.
It's speakers. I know. You like big, you like big horny, big woofer. You like the big low end, the big horny.
It's such a problem. It's like, no, it's really like got big butts and I can't lie. It's like such a problem. No, I mean like for real. It's an issue because I have like a garage full of like parts to build more things. So I'll just how many speakers did I build in 2023? I think I built 6.
I was gonna say I remember at least well over 3 to 4. Then so 6 makes sense. Yeah,
so, like probably 6, but like 2 or 3 of them were like things I built over and over again. That I come back to. So like I build a skinny corn scala that's like a 3-way corn scala, super big horns, adjustable crossovers, 12-inch woofer. So think like it looks like a Forte, but it's got the horns of a Cornwall. You know, I did that a few times. I built looks like a Heresy, but it's got the horn of a Cornwall.
And then you built your big boys too.
Yeah, then I built the thing that's like, you know, I think I'm Devin Turnbull, but I'm not.
I don't know. Those are very Oha speaker of you.
Well, what's crazy is if you look up like the Amps and Sound Royale, that design has actually existed for like 10 years. That's been floating around.
Which is bananas.
You know, as a big speaker. They look like refrigerators, the big ones.
Yeah.
You know, but yeah, so the multi-cell Altec.
Those things are ridiculous. They're just massive.
Well, and they were in my music room.
So I mean, to give comparison, like if you go to Justin's, I think I linked below his Instagram, or at least his website. I mean, just go to Amps and Sound on Instagram, and you can go and you'll see him sitting in the Christmas bed in the background with these things. And Justin's not a little guy, like.
No, I mean I'm 6 feet 300 pounds.
Yeah, like, and he's sitting there, and these things are like dwarfing him. And that's how you know.
Yeah, I mean they're like 30 inches wide, 20 inches deep, 5 feet tall.
Well, so I have your corn scalas. You know,
you have my weapon of choice.
Yes, I have these, and so they showed up on pallets, and my wife was not home. And so then I manhandled these into the house.
Can you imagine if she was home and
she would have denied it? She was like, "No, send it back." So I get them in the house. I shove them into where they need to be, and she gets home and she's like walking around. She's like, "Something's not right. Like something's amiss." And I'm just quiet, like. And she finally goes, "What are those?" And I was like, "Oh, those are speakers from Justin." And she's like, They don't go there. And I was like, well, if you can move them, you can move them. So they've been there since.
That's awesome. You know, and I built 2 sets of, so like this is the disease talking. So I got a burr up my ass about Altec 604s. So principally because like I've been a member of the Klipsch forum for a long time. Klipsch got bought by the Vox Group. The Vox Group, being a holding company, has done a lot of really wonderful things for the Klipsch group, but they have taken down systematically every post that ever had to do with things that were not exact products of Klipsch. And for 20 and 30 years, the Klipsch group was like, hey, it started out as a Klipsch idea. Let's post about it. And it was like an incubator.
Yeah.
And they systematically like plucked out all of these good ideas and just deleted them.
Wow.
Which isn't nice. That's like,
no,
you know, that's mean.
That's pretty bad.
Right. Like, and I mean, like I'd post like not selling anything. I'd post like pictures of my builds and be like, hey, like what y'all think? Like, here are the cabinet dimensions and here are the crossovers I used, and you know, like, and just deleted them.
Wow.
And so like I was like, all right, well, that's no longer fun. I'm gonna build some Altex. And so I built like these, and then I got this idea in my head, like, let me build one like straight up the traditional Altec way, and then let me do one my way. The problem with that is twofold. The drivers are like stupidly expensive.
So you have Altec right behind you. So they have the horn inside of the driver.
Yeah, so there's the Altex right there. Let's see, I back up and let you guys
back that thing up, Justin. Back that.
Can you guys see okay?
Yeah.
There you go.
So you have the JBLs right next to them.
Yes.
Which are also cool.
Well, and
both of those are fantastic.
Then there's a Nautilus and my Pre and an Aurelic Altair G1 and my Pre again and step up transformers, and then the turntable I built because I have a disease.
Yeah, because that's the other thing. You do build a lot of turntables too. That's the other thing you build.
Yes.
You're a DIY guy. That's at the end of the day, that's what you do.
And then because I have to have matching power conditioners, one for all of the sources and then one for all the power amps, then I have my matching power amps. And then because you can't have a 2-channel rig next to a personal audio rig, I have the exact same matching Altair DAC for the 2-channel rig, because it's a disease again. We talked about this.
That's a rabbit hole, man. I always talk about, that's what I mentioned in my video too. It's like once you start going down these rabbit holes, it's really hard to get back out.
So yes, so that is a 16-inch woofer with a horn inside,
which is bananas.
All right, so let me take a seat again.
Yeah.
So the original Altec cabinet, the problem with it is it's huge.
Yeah, that's a big speaker.
No, this is not. This is the baby one. This is the one I designed. This is like the tiny one. No, the one in my office is.
It's massive.
No, it's not tall. It's 26 inches wide by like 18 inches deep and weighs like 180 pounds each. I have to sumo hug it to move it.
That's how I felt.
No one knows my pain.
Your cord skull is awesome. That's why I was like foot under one, and then just like, and I just manhandled it up and just walked like.
Oh, come on, they're not that bad.
They're not horrible. What are they about? It's more than just they're big. Like, so it's like, it's the awkwardness of holding them.
But they're 30% smaller than an actual Cornwall.
Which is nice. Dude, honestly, like I had a kid over the other day, and he was like, oh, he mixes. He's a music engineer. So he's been mixing off his MacBook and, you know, whatever headphones and what have you. And he was like, I did this mix. And I'm like, well, throw it on the corn skull. Let's go. Let's do this. And
was this with like, the F5s or the Eggers?
F5.
Okay.
And then so he was listening, and he was like, dude, it blew his mind. He was like, I've never heard my mix sound like this. This is what it's supposed to sound like. Like, this is what, like, he was like, just like, like, listen to all his different tracks he's been mixing. And he was just like, Because that was what it was. So,
So
I mean,
like, so back to the question. This baffle is 1.75 inches thick.
not circumference, just the.
No, that it's an 1.75 inches thick.
Wow.
Because why not?
Why not?
Why not? Yeah. So so the Altex are super awesome, and they had a whole bunch of problems, and so I have a friend that designs crossovers. It's like that's all he does.
Mm-hmm.
Savant that he is, completely lacks interpersonal skills. So don't ask him questions because you don't really want to have conversations with him. But he does most things by email really well.
Yes.
Crossover turned out really well though. So anyway, I built one set like the OG Altec way, and I tried the original Altec crossover, and I just couldn't live with it. It sounded like it was completely atrocious. Couldn't live with it. And then I had my friend design the crossover, put my own crossover in it. It sounded like magic. And then I decided to build my own, like, basically I was done with building Klipsch style speakers. And so I built these as like, hey, I don't need a Klipsch style speaker anymore. And so these are sort of like commensurate level with my Korn Scalas, but done with an Altec.
Altec, yeah.
And so now I'm left with two big, huge Altecs. And then through the grace of some good friendship, I got access to some JBLs. They just came off the JBL truck, and
they just fell off.
They just fell off
and
walked to my
house and some.
Just walked. No, they just magically came to my home. No, I mean, like I got given like how like the Gap had the friends and family.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
If you're part of the friends and family,
you knew somebody that hooked you up. I got you.
Yeah. And so they never get to be sold as a result, though. I will be buried with them.
I can just see.
Well, and then I have a set of Devin's such a just super cool collaborator. Devin sent me a set of his OHASs to build again. So I'm building a set of his OHASs.
That's dope.
And then because I'm showing at Florida this year and at Axpona with Acora is sending me a set of his 250-pound each Acoras.
Wow.
And I was telling my wife, I wanted to say like I'm one speaker too deep, and she's like,
that was like weeks. That was like years ago, Justin. Like you were one speaker too deep. Right. Just like a decade ago, you were one speaker too deep.
Right. She's like, you have a speaker problem. I know.
And not just a speaker problem, a big speaker problem. And by big,
I know. I mean, like, I really like fundamentally do. And it's a wonderful problem to have because I get to hear
some crazy,
what
speakers.
Right, and I get to hear what the gear sounds like on. By the way, so I'd love to get to some questions at some point, but I did a little bit of a site reorganization, and we put like specialty products or specialty amplifiers because I changed it up so people can sort of see like this is what the normal like course of choices is for the site, and like what makes sense for 95% of people. And then if you're a person who thinks outside the box, we got out of the box thinking. So
specialty. Out of the box.
Yeah. Well, the Agartha is like the Agartha and the Rockwell are sort of out of the box choices because like the Red October makes total sense, and the Bigger Ben, like if you go like Mogwai is good, Mogwai SE is good, Bigger Ben is best, or Bigger Ben is Mogwai SE is good, Bigger Ben is, how's it go? Good, better. So Mogwai SE is good, Bigger Ben is better, Nautilus is best, right? And then if you go Red October is best, like the Agartha is really, really good, but you kind of have to go, should I get a Bigger Ben? like you have to decide, like, are you buying a really expensive 300B tube? Because it's like, if you're not buying, should you be buying a 300B if you're not buying a Western Electric or a Takasuki or an Elerog?
And that is the conundrum at the end of the day, right?
Right. And then, so that's why it's sort of in this like specialty class, right? Specialty question. And then there's like the Rockwell, which is like, well, if you can think out of the box, you can run a really old triode that you can get NOS US tubes for like $150 each. But you got to like kind of think about it in the right context to know that, you know?
Yeah.
But
well, you have to know what you're doing with the tubes too. Like you have to know.
So I have a Kenzie coming out that's going to be a kind of going to be a fun one. I don't quite know how to position it yet, but
Kenzie
I got these
experimental.
I don't. I mean, like, part of me thinks I need to change the name of it to like the Complete or something like that. The Enema. I don't know. So because I got these OHASs that are like in finishing right now, right? And they're going to be super awesome. You know, I'm a state employee. I'm actually thinking about putting these OHASs in my office, in my state office.
It would be like what was that movie? Joe versus the volcano. That just have these burr.
So I built a Kenzie though with a set of binding posts too. So it's got one 100 ohm tap for like headphones, and then it's got a set of chunky ass binding posts for like the OHASs.
That'd be dope. Dude, a Kenzie with speaker taps would be legit.
It's in photography tonight, right now as we speak.
That might be dope. That might be the thing right there, man.
Right. So like if you have a Cornwall, Corn Scala, JBL, Altec. I had it playing with my Altecs. I was like, you know, Altecs at like 90-6 dB, but like I was rocking out. Like I had no issue. Like my little 1 watt wonder I was very happy, you know? And it's like, it's the perfect choice for like the OHASs of the world and the choices like that. Cause it's like, you have this little Chiquito, you know, with a little volume control, and I'm like little iPod, you know?
The wheel, the old school. We're going hipster now. We're gonna get
wait. I have a whole bunch of those old FiOS, and I love them. Don't get mad. I still have those FiOS. Those are awesome.
Yeah, but I agree. I think that'd be dope. Like I always said, like, so the thing that always bummed me out with not bummed me out. That's drastic. That's dramatic. That's a dramatic word. But like the thing that I always wanted, like when I had it here, the Kenzie just most recently, I was like, man, I really wanted to put that on with the Corn Scots. Like I just did. Like you know what I mean? Like I just.
So now you're telling me I need to send it to you to blast with?
I'm not trying to twist your arm or anything, but.
And it comes in like a little lunchbox case.
Yeah. What's I'm picturing the scene. The little briefcase. But no, but I think that's something that I think in a lot. So with your amps specifically, I feel like they are, and this is just my hot take, they're speaker amp first. Does that make sense? Like, but they sound fantastic with headphones. But I feel like they're speaker amp first. Like I feel like, and maybe that's just me transitioning more towards speakers as a preference. But I you know what I mean? But like that's my take on it. Like I feel like,
well, I would come back to like the Nautilus, the Red October are 100%. The Nautilus, the Red October, the Bigger Ben, the Agartha are like 100% headphone first, in my opinion, right? But I think like as listeners, as audience members, we are all diversifying.
Yes.
Our interests are becoming more varied.
Agreed. Well, I mean, I've always I want to do all. I don't want to.
But and then the next thing is like headphones sound less like headphones.
Yeah.
Headphones have become so
going back.
Good headphones have surpassed exceptional. Good headphones.
Yeah.
Good headphones have matched exceptional speakers.
Yeah.
And exceptional headphones have almost exceeded exceptional speakers.
For intimate listening, I agree.
Yes.
And so going back to this has been a while, but Can Jam New York, when I was there with you, the thing that blew my mind was the Red October, and it made headphones that I didn't necessarily like. It made me like them. If that makes sense. So like I'm going to probably get grief for this, but like the LCD5, the Dan Clark Stealth, I think it was, these are both technically very good headphones. I did not like
they both require to sound good. They both require a lot of power.
And putting them on the Red October and or the Nautilus, they became what I was expecting them to be. I guess that's just that, like the hype behind them, and then hearing them on normal systems. I don't want to put that out there, but like hearing them on systems that were kind of out and about at Can Jam, and then putting them on the Nautilus and the the Red October, and then watching other people's expectations, other people had and brought them over and listened, and you could see the definitive, like, people going, oh, this didn't sound the same over there. Like that's that experience with it.
So like, I'm not, unfortunately, just because like I was up till 3 a.m. last night transferring cases and like managing like my clinical practice, right? And also getting ready for Florida. But believe it or not, getting ready for Florida means getting ready for Axpona almost at the same time. So I'm not making it to Can Jam New York, even though like it's so super important and like I really want to be a part of the community. But Dan and Andy are taking a Nautilus to New York for me.
That's smart, in my opinion.
And one of my special little booster boxes. My booster boxes are like these preamps, like my preamp, but with like if you already owned one of my amps, and you're like, hey, but I already have a volume pot, Justin. What do I do? I'm not trying to plug it, but I'm just trying to give you an idea of like why I did something. The booster box is a preamp without a volume pot. So I built, booster box. So I built a booster box for Andy because he always likes to use the Yigi, and so like, and the Yigi I think always sounds better on XLR. So I have a booster box, and none of my booster boxes till today were XLR in. So I built a Yigi, a booster box that's XLR in with input transformers that convert it from balanced
to a single-ended.
Like it's like one of my balanced to single-ended converter boxes plus a booster box. So it converts it from balanced to single-ended correctly, boosts it, right? And then sends it into the Nautilus. And we bumped up the boost a little bit more because it's going into Dan's headphones, but Dan's headphones like a lot of power.
They do like a lot of power.
And so, it's like, you want throttle? We're going to give you throttle. We're going to bring you the noise.
Yeah, that's dope. See, and that's
but that's also like a testament back to the community. Like I love that Dan's doing that for me. They're nice. Frogging awesome.
Dude, Dan, like I don't. He probably has no clue who the hell I am. But like I met him and I chatted with him at Can Jam New York City, and dude, super nice guy. One of the nicest guys there, honestly. Super chill. But I don't know. But like,
did you guys have questions I could answer for people?
Yeah, let's go through I'm gonna go to the top real quick. Let me scroll through. The first one was from Marius. It was like right from the get-go. It was what's your take on subwoofers in really good stereo rig? Risky or worth it? Also vented, ported, or open baffle sub?
So generally not worth it. Hard to integrate, truthfully. Just unless you like EDM. I mean, like if you like EDM, then you have to do a sub. if you're going to do a sub, you probably actually want to look at an H-frame. H-frame subs or open baffle subs are probably the fastest that exist. Also, the cheapest to build as a DIYer. If you want to go, or don't fight physics, big boxes win. So is it GCG Audio? These guys out of they're in Southern California. They build these huge subwoofer kits. I mean, like when I say huge, we're talking like 6 cubic feet boxes. They go all the way up to like 21 inches.
Not WAF, not WAF, dude. That's not WAF acceptable right there.
Depends on who your wife is.
Touche.
I saw this other. I don't think it was a meme. It's like she's a 10 out of a 10, and she fishes, and she likes to fish, and the meme goes, "You have a guy."
You have a guy. Stop.
So anyway, subs are just so. It's work. I mean, it's like
work.
It's like do you date the girl who's like a solid 7 and like kinky and cute, or do you date like the 9.5 who like nails and hair and like? Yeah, I can't commit to the effort. Like the upkeep is too hard.
So I had a sub for the longest time, and dude, like it was the biggest pain in my. So I had a sub for my Kefs, my near field, this setup right here, and I had the sub and everything, and dude, and depending on what I had for it for amps and what have you, it was either easy and it worked great, or it was the biggest pain in my ass. It's to the point where I'm just like, it's in the closet now. It's packed up in the closet, and I just listen to my Kefs near field because I just don't want to deal with the subwoofer, man. I just don't. But I don't know. That's my take. Anyways, next question.
Yeah.
Let's see here. A lot of chatting back and forth. EQ, 1000 digital. Every time you EQ a digital domain, you lose resolution at the end of the map. That was the EQ stuff. Genlex only corrected below 200 hertz as well. Once you correct, this is from P for Fa. Hey, I haven't seen P for Fa in a while. I've been really bad at all my social media Discord game, so I've been having chat with a bunch of people. But once you correct for higher frequencies, you can mess with natural resonances and how the speakers interact with the room. That's what we were already discussing. I think we already went over that. We kind of beat that horse a little bit. And then Jay says, depends on what record we're talking about, how it was mastered, etc. That was regarding how well a record sounds, like how good of a high quality record. So you get one of those, the super, what do they call those? The
UHQR.
UHQ. Thank you. Yeah.
Like the Miles Davis UHQR record is absolutely stupidly one of the best records I've ever heard.
I think that's what Jay's saying. Like you can get something like that where it's just like game over. And so Jay's a big vinyl guy. You chatted with him at Can Jam SoCal, I think. Jay's the guy I have on my show.
Jay is rocking at this exact moment. What does he have?
He's got
a great. No. He's got a Gerard 301 and a Schick 12-inch with an Ortofon SPU. Didn't you post that today, Jay?
I think yeah. Yeah.
Am I wrong? Wasn't that beautiful table I saw that posted today?
It's probably Jay. Yeah, it might have been Jay. Yeah.
Jay has an absolutely gorgeous transcriptor of a table.
He's a big vinyl head though, man. Like he's a vinyl head.
Yeah, but his I mean, I'm not knocking. Look, like I'm going to Axpona and going to be rocking a VPI classic signature, and magically it's going to come home with me. Just magically, it's going to follow me home like an elf.
Oh man, that's actually one of Jay's grails. He wants a VPI. I think it was a Scout. He wants a Scout. I think is what his eventual end game. Not in game, but like,
what do you mean? His table he has now is an in-game table.
There's always more, Justin. There's always the
Jay's table is so OG It's like having like a 1973 Mercedes 240 fully restored.
Pretty badass, yeah. Oh, you know what I saw the other day was the Volvo. It was the old hatchback Volvo from the 70s.
Okay, yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
Mm-hmm.
It was beefy, dude. It was perfectly. Anyways,
Slower than mud.
slower than mud,
Slower
but cool
than
as hell looking.
Uh-huh. The 740 wagon
Yeah, yeah.
or the 240 wagon.
I think it was. Yeah, I think it was a 240. But anyways, next fun question here.
Yeah.
Marcello, he asked a question, but we already answered it. Someone they say I need to get an 8-track.
Is he in a hot tub? Is he in a hot tub?
He probably is in the hot tub. Oh, so here you go. So Unity Gain does ensure your signal is at its best for any application and will prevent excess noise, hiss, and hum. So it's a trade-off.
Yeah. No, I disagree.
Okay. I think he knew that.
No, I mean, like, look, I believe in gain. Like, I take the position that some gain, especially for tube amplifiers, especially for single-ended amplifiers, is beneficial. But I control the amount of gain that I provide. Most preamps will provide like a gain of like 12. So like, you know, or more. So like, you know, Macintosh pre's sometimes we'll see like 12 volts out, 12 to 24 volts out, right? Where like you can overdrive equipment with that much voltage out. And it's not needed unless you're driving really, really, really long cable, really long cable runs, which in the systems that I am intending my equipment to be used in wouldn't be that kind of system anyway.
Gotcha.
You know, so if you have like a gain of 2 to 3, the probability of like a low noise floor, like we've measured intermodulation distortion and noise, and it's like 3 digits to 4 digits out. It's non-existent. Look, it's a solid. It's a solid state component. It is so low in distortion that it's infinitesimally low. That's why they're used. Like they're used for a reason, and they're, you know, we're using them so underrated. You know, like an interesting question is like, Justin, why aren't you building a tube pre? Well, funny you might ask that, John.
Someone actually was not here, but like someone did mention.
I am building a tube pre based on an Ampex tape head. It's going to cost between $7,000 and $12,000, and it's going to have. It's using a push-pull configuration for the output of the tubes. It has output transformers that were the same winding instructions as the Ampex tape heads did. So, like, if you think like Marantz had the Marantz 7 circuit, Ampex had a competing circuit for the pro audio world. So it's like the competing circuit, like the Marantz 7 for the pro audio world.
For pro audio world. Okay.
And it's gonna have like input transformers, output transformers. It's going to convert single-ended balance and balance to single-ended. It's going to do a whole lot of things, but it ain't going to be free, and it's going to be space intensive because it's going to be on turret boards and stuff like that.
It's going to be big.
But right, but like this pre sort of answers the question of like, do you build a pre? Does it do what we need it to do? Does it have a good value prop? You know? And so the question of like, why op amps, or why a single op amp? The single op amp, as low as we're, you know, rather than even like cascading them, right? The single op amp at the gain function that we're using is really low distortion and like more than 200% under spec. So it's loafing. Like we're never pushing it hard.
It's just
Yep. And the same for like the power supply, and the same for the phono stage. And so like, you know, they're super linear. And so all they're doing is just pushing a little bit of signal, enough to like light up the power amp a little bit further.
That's kind of bananas when you think about it.
And then the nice thing with the op amps is you could in theory do op amp rolling, and what we've done is we selected op amps that were even more linear and even quieter, because we've rolled enough op amps over the years to know which ones are better, and we've bought quieter, more linear op amps, which is so stupid because op amps are inherently very, 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 very quiet and very, 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 very linear, but you can make them quieter and even more linear.
Which is op amp rolling is a whole other beast.
or if one was to get really stupid about it, you could go to a discrete op amp.
Yeah, that'd be an interesting way to. But why? I mean, I guess you could.
Well,
Sparko
Labs.
Sparko's does. I do want to try their amp.
Oh no, he. I mean, I've known him for better than a decade. He's a smart. He's a smart man.
Yeah, because they have that amp that the solid state with the where you can op amp roll with their. It has a.
Well, he for more than a decade he's made replacement op amps that were discrete.
Mm-hmm.
So you just buy the piece. He has a PCB. You pull out your old op amp, push in the new one.
Good. Yep. And that's what someone was saying. Like you could just basically buy that amp, and every time there's an upgrade, you just literally just swap in the new op amp, and you're in the upgrade. Which is pretty dope when you think about it.
Mm-hmm.
So it was not Jay, by the way, for that turntable.
Okay.
Yeah. So he says it's pretty funny actually. Marcello says, yeah, and subs they can be probably set the crossover game, and he's saying they can be good, not just for EDM. And you are right, Marcello, they can be good.
Oh, I agree. My neuroses takes over with subs. Mm-hmm. And so it is better to not indulge my neuroses. I already have a speaker problem. Do we need to make me have a subwoofer problem too?
You mean you're gonna be Devin no time soon.
No, so I used to have stereo matching subs plus my Korn Scalas, and then I had active room correction implemented, and then I had linear power supplies for the room correction units because I had mini DSPs for the subs.
So it just overtakes.
It just how I made it the most complicated answer I could ever have made it. It was
well, that's my problem. At the end of the day, is I want the simple solution. So when, like I said, when the subwoofers work great, it's usually because I had a amp here that had a subwoofer out. Anytime I didn't have a subwoofer out and I had to integrate it myself and make it work that way, is when I was having. That's when I was like, and I don't have currently I do not have an amplifier that has a subwoofer out, or a pre that has a subwoofer, or whatever. I don't have anything that has. So for me to integrate the sub means I have to work extra hard to make it work right, and I just don't want to. At the end of the day, I'm lazy and I don't want to do. I have other things I'd rather spend my time and brain power on. But back to, so I think. Marcello said, he says specifically, do it stereo, tie them into your main speakers properly, set the crossover game on, and it makes all music sound better, not just EDM.
This is from the man who probably owns 2 Rels.
He does have 2 Rels. So does Jay. Jay has 2 Rels.
This is the company line from people who have Rels, and then anybody who owns 2 Rels will tell you that you need 4 more, because if you have the 6 Rel stack, that is when you have the true resolution.
But the Jay says, so he is not that guy. So Jay says, and Marcello's, I guess he's departed. So Jay said, my chain, this is actually wish it was that good regarding the chain you were speaking of. But he has the Hannah SL MMF 7.1 PS Audio Stellar Phonostage Freya Plus, the Agers, and the LS50 Metas, which in my opinion is still a fantastic. I mean,
what's the table though?
What's the is it the Hannah SL?
No, that's the
cartridge MMF 7. Oh, he uses Technics.
Oh, MF. So he has the music hall.
Which I mean, Jay's set is pretty dope in my opinion. I like his setup.
The claim to fame on that probably is that I mean, music halls more than anything actually produce really exceptionally good tone arms.
Arms.
Their
So I
their tone
mean,
arms are actually really really well behaved.
yeah,
Which
I think
is there's a whole argument to that about like turntables is like, is the magic in the table,
or the tone
the
arm.
speed control, the cartridge, or the tone arm? Like there's this
It's
whole
all of
tone arms take you pretty far.
it. But I mean, that's everything. I mean, you can say the same thing about like a good, like, so like a car, right? The engine takes you really far, but you still need the tires, the brakes, the suspension, the same concept. But the main meat and potatoes of it, you could say, and I'm not saying the tone arm is meat and potatoes, but you know what I mean. I'm a baby when it comes to the lovely turntable world, so don't listen to me regarding that stuff. But but yeah, I think some good stuff there. So then Marius asks, so new speakers are coming out. What price range are you aiming for?
Wait, you mean me building, or what are we asking?
I think that's what he's asking. Yeah.
No, these are like the problem with me building speakers is it's a crack addiction. I sell them for what I have in them, so I can build more speakers. I don't make money on building speakers. It's just the fun
the thing to get to the next step up.
Well, like I'm selling my Altec, like the Altecs I have in my office, just so I can so I have one pair fewer speakers, because I really am probably 2 pairs speakers too deep at the moment.
But you're gonna build another one, so I don't know what you're.
No, I mean, I really tried to promise myself to stop. So I tried to promise myself to stop doing it, and then I cut new baffles for these, where I scooped the baffle to turn it into a horn.
I promised myself, but then I did this other thing to make this.
I hear you. No, but maybe it'll make it so someone else wants it. Someone else wants the parts. But yeah, so I turned the front baffle into a horn, so it actually looks like a salad bowl effect. So it actually horn loads the Altec.
That's kind of nuts. That'll be kind of crazy. I bet that'll be a fun listen.
This is what happens when you have friends with big CNCs.
True. I mean, when you have big machinery, you got to use it, right?
The problem is, like, I'm up late at night. I think of ideas. I text people, and people respond back to me. This is like the problem.
Hey, can we do this? Yeah, we can do that.
I think for real.
Tell me now.
I emailed Cardis because I need cable for Florida and for Axpona. I emailed Cardis at like 3 a.m. my cable needs. And yes, I have a lot of Cardis cable. I have a lot of Cardis cable coming. Like prolifically disgusting amounts of Cardis cable coming.
Cheese and rice. Cardis is good. I like Cardis stuff. They're expensive. They're pricey though. That's pricey cable right there.
We don't need to discuss. Why are we discussing this? I thought we established some ground rules about things we don't do in audio.
Okay, last question. We'll gloss over that. Last question. Marius asked, "What cartridge for your new VPI?" We'll end on a turntable.
Well, so Matt's a close friend. Matt will probably put on the Shyla. I would prefer it to come with an Ortofon 2M Bronze. I actually think the Ortofon 2M Bronze is a stupidly good sounding cartridge. Stupidly good. And incredibly forgiving, and in show conditions, the elliptical stylus on the 2M Bronze is the right answer. And I think in truth, like the 2M Bronze as a moving magnet cartridge is like the right answer for almost everybody. Now, if we back into the question differently and say, Justin, under normal conditions, what cartridge do you run? That's a better question.
Yes.
My 2 cartridge choices are: I run a Ortofon. I run a Denon 10309. I run a Denon 103R, always the R, not the 103. And I run a step up. And you can make the thing about step ups is they never wear out. It's a way of converting low output cartridges that are moving coil to being compatible with moving magnet phono stages.
Okay.
And so a step up transformer will cost you in all probability $300 to $500. You know, get them on eBay, look around, you can get it done. And it's like a one-time purchase. Like you get it,
It's good to go.
You bought what you need for the rest of your life. And the 103 is been made for like 40 or 60 years, and it's like the go-to answer. It's a staple.
Okay.
And it's really hard to do. I mean, you can do different. You can't always do better.
And that's what it always comes down to.
It's like $350,
which isn't bad, especially in the cartridge world.
Oh, right. We're like, and the 2M bronze is like a $550 cartridge. So I'm not talking about big expensive cartridges. Like the other choices are the Audio Technica OC9. They come in like 3 different versions, but whichever version of the Audio Technica, the OC9s are absolutely magical, fantastically good sounding cartridges. Like I own 3 of them. Like they all sound great. I do not like Shibata styluses because they pick up so much dust. So like everybody who's like, oh, I own a 2M, an Ortofon 2M black. I'm like, I'm so sorry for you. Because like the 2M black is over the bronze. The 2M black is such an unforgiving cartridge that unless your record is perfectly clean, it sounds like shit.
I got you. So yeah, and that dude. So this is before we sign off, but like that's another factor, right? Is you have these variances, or not variants, levels of going down the rabbit hole, and like so that what you just said reminds me of like that's the person that wants to go. They are meticulous. They are looking for the exact that.
It's the ESS person.
Yes, thank you. That's the ESS. It's the person that's just like, and they're neurotic about. Not that that's a bad thing, but they like perfectly clean their records every time. Everything is like and everything has to be like that perfect. This is the sound. Like
right. Where like I'm like, give me an elliptical stylus because it like no matter what I put on it,
I'm gonna be happy. Yeah.
Yep. And am I gonna lose some high frequency air and space? Yeah, sure. Damn right I am.
But I'm imbibing and I'm having a good time on my couch, so I don't care.
Right.
So I think that's the thing, like, and not that, and there's no wrong way. Like I don't think that me saying that like is a bad thing. I think that's awesome. Like that people have that in them to do that and get to that level. I just don't personally. You know what I mean?
I have a friend who is an ultrasonic cleaner, and like after 3 plays, and he actually has like a marker and will like mark the record on a card. After 3 plays, cleans it again, and it's like, I love that. Like, I mean, like that is such a dedication that I appreciate out of him.
Yes, and that's what I meant. Like I appreciate that, and I bet it's amazing to go to their place and be like, dude, listen to their setup is probably like.
I just recognize that's not me.
100%. We're on page.
Back to the question. So
yeah,
let me just kind of close it. Do I think removing a volume pot improve the sound? I think that removing a volume pot and putting it on the pre sort of removes a veil from the sound. You wouldn't think that it should, but it was like, if you've ever like had art framed, you know how they go like, do you want studio art? Do you want museum quality glass with your art? And I'm always like, no, it's normal. I'm not paying the extra glass.
I live in a house. I'm not in a museum.
but it's this question of like, do I want the glass to have fewer defects? Do I want my lens to be to be as transparent as possible? And I think that the removal of the volume pod on any of my amplifiers really does that. And
Makes sense.
so I don't have the bandwidth today, but it's going to go on my honey-do list for the site. You know, for no extra charge, we're going to eventually get to a place that you're going to be able to order any of the amps without a volume pot, and you can decide. I mean, it may add slightly to your build time, and it will not change your build cost, I don't think, but you know, you'll have the ability to have it without a volume pot if you wish. Now, if you do that, then you need to decide how are you going to either control inputs or control volume. I think a pre, whether you choose mine or not, is a really good idea.
Yeah, I agree.
Back to the question of an active gain stage on a single-ended amplifier improves sound.
And in my experience with doing that, and I said in my video, I agree. Like, I think that once you start going down that path, it's not, it's kind of like going into, once you hear something, it's like, it's hard to go backwards, right? Like, it's hard to go, you know, at the end of the day. And then there's something to be said about, you know, simplicity, but there's also something to be said about Tetrising your, I think I said that in the thing, is like Tetris your gear the way you want it. And by allowing you to do that, it makes it so you can make it yours by mix and matching and getting it where you want to be.
I mean, I have a Nautilus here that this is being burned in. It's going to go to Dan, right? But I have a Nautilus here that is completely bypassable. The volume pot is completely bypassable. Right? Well, no, it's just, you max it out. It's bypassable, the step attenuator.
Yeah.
Right. But I have cut and commissioned for me personally a Nautilus and a Red October that has no volume pot. The metalwork actually has a part number of NVP, no volume pots.
Wow.
Right. And I feel guilty about it on one level. And I think it's stupid. Like, I have some audiophile guilt about it. But I also know, like, in every room I use now, I have a preamp. You know, in my home stereo, I was always really unhappy, and I have a set of corn scalas just like you have, the exact same speaker, truthfully. I hated the sound of the system with the Parasound gear I had in there. Just never had life. And then I put in the Calypso amp and one of my pre's, and it's like, it's alive. It's alive with 8 watts.
Yeah.
Right. And the Calypso is a stereo power amp. Basically, it's like a Nautilus on stereo. It's like a Nautilus and a Bryce had a baby, you know. And then on my home stereo here, it's like I have Zions, and I replaced my Macintosh pre, and I didn't lose anything by getting rid of my Macintosh pre by putting my own pre in, believe it or not. But the way I consume my audio at this point, even if I use headphones, and I have beautiful, lovely headphones I really enjoy, I'm going to use a pre in front of it because I like the way it sounds better. So the amplifier doesn't need a volume pot. I have this, you know, like, I have a neuroses to my personality that I don't like to have a component have the same function twice.
That makes sense. I mean, and that's the thing. Once you have a pre, it kind of goes back to the, like, once you have it, like, and you're happy with it, you can mix and match it anywhere you want. So why need the volume pot? So I mean, you can actually, once, you know, you can mix and match. But like, but back to the topic on hand, like, I agree. Like, I having a pre has immensely helped my systems in place that I have. Like, I have the Ellicott that I got from you, and then I built. Yeah,
I built it.
Yeah, you built that one. Yeah, and that thing's fantastic. With I have it with the Vidar into my Kefs is what I'm rocking currently with it, and it makes the Vidar. Honestly, the Vidar is great. The problem with the Vidar, that one I have at least, is it gets hum, so I have to get a hum remover on it. And that's,
so you tried the Vidar 2?
I've not tried the Vidar 2. So that would probably be a thing to look into. But there's also another part of me that wants to go dive into vintage gear. Like, but I don't think that would be for this system. vintage gear would be for, I think, the corn scalas and like going. I want to go down that rabbit hole a little bit with the vintage gear, but that's neither here nor there. But for this setup, I think the Vidar 2 might be a good option, actually. I might have to get rid of this.
They
Vidar
did a
1.
whole revision of the Nexus circuit for it, and they have a standby switch on it now, so it doesn't stay on the whole time.
That's actually dope.
Now it's called the Vidar 2.
As my daughter would say, deuces. I'm going deuces. But yeah, I think that might be a good way to look at it. Maybe I'll do that. Maybe I'll put this thing up for sale locally and look into a Vidar 2. That might be the way. The other thing I was looking at is the Ragnarok, new Ragnarok 2.
Uh-huh.
I think that might be an interesting play.
But that back to the whole question of pre versus,
and that's the problem. Like
all in one Swiss
all
Army
in one
knife
versus, and I think in all truth, that you get the Vidar for so much cheaper than the Ragnarok. So it's like,
right.
And I already have the setup. I just have to literally plug and play. So either way.
The Vidar 2 is actually supposedly really, really, really pretty nice. And it comes in black now.
I have a black Vidar 1 here, which is black is the way. Once, as they say, once you go, you can't go back.
But the standby switch is the biggest deal.
I really want, I think that's the next one I want to do. Is I want to have I'm looking at that. That's the next step, because right now I don't have a hum remover for it, and for whatever reason with these casts in my system that I currently have, I have a lot of cables. I have a lot of different amps, different DACs.
Have you tried putting a magnet on the back on the IEC?
I have not.
So if you go to Parts Express
and
you go into their cables, you can get these magnets that are earth core magnets. They clip on the back, like $8, $6. You measure the diameter.
Yeah. You slap them on,
and it'll change the field coil on it.
That's interesting. I might try that out.
Okay, might solve the problem.
That might solve the problem, because I do like the Vidar with these. It powers these like no problem, especially in near field. This stupid amount of power. So Jay asks, what about using a preamp with a headphone amp that has a volume pot? Same thing, right?
Well, so I mean, it goes back. I guess the question you have to ask yourself is two things. One, what's the headphone amp, right? Like, I think a preamp is used for two questions or three questions. Do I want to put a turntable on it? Do I need more than one input? In an analog system, do I need more than one input, right? And do I want a gain function?
Gotcha.
Right. Because there's like, shit makes an interesting pre, topping makes it sort of an interesting pre. All of them sort of like don't quite do all of the same things that they like. If they gave you a phono stage, a little bit of gain, just keep it simple, John, right? Like phono stage, a little bit of gain, and not click when we change volumes.
And it'd be gravy. Yeah, because that's the thing with the Freya. The Freya does click. That's annoying.
Oh, it bothers everybody. But anyway, so like, I would probably, you either max out the headphone amps volume control, try to bypass it that way, or depending, sometimes it's kind of fun to have the second volume control because you're dialing out noise floor. Like if you have like some VCs or VOs, the VOs can be really kind of sensitive.
They're picky. They're sensitive to noise. Yeah.
And so, you could use it as a way of really attenuating your noise floor.
That's fair.
Because the VOs are not power hungry. The VOs don't need power. They really care about noise.
They care about, that's true. They really do. It's more about the noise than anything else with those. Actually, a lot of, even these ones, not as much. Definitively.
Are those the Calderas?
These are the Atriums.
Okay.
But I have the Calderas over there. But the Calderas, no, like they're planars. I've noticed the planars in your amps or planars in tube amps, like specifically like styled, work great. Like, I don't know.
Well, it's an efficient. I mean, it's an efficiency question. Like how a dynamic driver, like let's say a dynamic driver, depending on its magnet structure, could be anywhere. And and if it's like has beryllium as an example, it's probably going to be really light and really fast,
Really fast, yeah.
and really light
Mhm.
and really efficient.
So it's just
Like, energize like two wings of a hummingbird, lighted up, you know. Whereas a planner or an AMT as an example really requires a lot more power, and so it can absorb a lot more power. You know,
lose a lot of that noise floor quickly.
uh-huh, right.
All
So
right.
that's it's an interesting
Kind of balance.
duality,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Because it's also funny because the same headphones, like the Theos, VCs sound stupid good, but then they become finicky if you're not careful. Or depending on the tubes you're using and matching, it can be.
Or like I don't. Did you get a chance to try the Caldera with the Kenzie?
I did. It was fantastic. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, the Caldera is like peanut butter and jelly, man.
Yeah. Honestly, I mean, the Caldera and the Rad Zeros have been fantastic with all your amps, to be honest, that I've had in house.
Right.
While I had those two headphones. Actually, last question, and then we'll let everyone go to bed.
Sure. By the way, everybody, I hope that you look. Obviously, this kind of stuff is about self promotion on one level, but it's also like I enjoy talking with Tyler. I enjoy talking about these kinds of topics in an open forum. It's fun, and it's sort of like a Discord in real time.
Yeah, that's fair.
So I hope you guys actually see that and get a sense of it, because I enjoy this more than anything else. It's like why I enjoy doing shows. It's like hearing how people use stuff and think about stuff and what matters to people is the fun part of doing it.
Mm-hmm. The back and forth and learning the find out how
Mm-hmm.
everyone utilizes and engages with their gear to get to the music that they want to get to, or
100%.
their not get to the music, we get to how their sonic preferences work in their gear. But anyways, last questions. Ace Spades for 2-channel. Do you guys prefer tube pre, solid state power amps for solid state pre, tube power amps, etc.? I know my preference. And I kind of mentioned it in the video I had with your pre. And I think when I'm pairing to a tube, I want a solid state pre generally. Not always, but I mean, I found that balances, it lets the character of the tube amp come through. Whereas if I'm using a solid state amp, I want a tube pre to give it a little more flavor. Generally, not always. It's not a 1-to-1, but generally that's how I found it for me personally.
So I mean, it's such an interesting struggle. The pre-question is like something I've struggled with in the last few years because I'm trying to solve the problem for my company, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, I've used for many years, I used like a Dynaco Pass 3 circuit that I modified because the Pass 3 had like these impedance issues that were quirky to like how Dynaco did things. And so you had to like actually modulate the circuit, change the circuit up to make it work right. And once you did it, like you got a pretty honest two tube circuit. But there's also like some pretty honest like one tube. I guess I'm giving you my answer with backing into my answer. So let me just say this. I like tube pre's because they make things sound better. I think tubes make things sound more holographic in general. The problem with that, and I know I sound like I'm delayed. The problem with that is that most modern implementations of tube circuits, the LE kit that Tyler has is not one of them. Is not one of them.
No,
is not one of them. Because I'll tell you why. The problem with most modern implementations, though, is that they try to linearize the behavior of the tube with solid state components, and they tend to snuff the effing life out of the tube.
I was gonna say, to make it not a tube anymore, and why do you even have a tube at that point?
So they put like voltage regulators in it. They put JFETs on the like, they put JFETs on the output stages of the tube.
Mhm.
Like can't say who does it or whatnot, but they do.
Mhm.
I mean, like I've owned Macintosh stuff, and like I think Macintosh stuff, like stuff I aspired to as like a kid. Like I mean, I could tell you like the amount of Macintosh stuff I've owned before I built stuff that was good enough not to own Macintosh stuff.
Mhm.
Now I don't own any Macintosh stuff because like I think my stuff is good enough,
Mhm.
But like old Macintosh stuff is different than new Macintosh stuff. New Macintosh stuff is like tubes plus a computer.
Mhm.
Tubes plus a computer is not a tube amp. It's not a tube circuit, and it's not like a good answer in my opinion. So if you're willing to like go like vintage tube, cool. But then you're like signing on to like vintage tube maintenance concerns like power supply capacitors and stuff like that,
You might have to get some maintenance done on it, have some get it refurbished and what have you.
Right. And that's or DIY it. Like there's like you can do good stuff DIY and make it really reliable, but you got to go simple. So I think like that's a solid idea. Like if you said like, hey, Justin, there's a single tube line input that's like widely available, like I could like post it for you guys, that sounds really fantastic, and you build it for like $300. That's a solid idea, right?
Yeah.
And then I would say like go buy $150 and then go buy Shannon Parks's Puffin. That thing is
look, that
Shannon.
So good.
Shannon is an old collaborator of mine, and that man is so stupidly smart about tubes and cartridge. He's a cartridge guy. If ever there was a guy that he owns more cartridges than anybody you might ever have known. You think I got speaker issues? That man's got cartridge issues.
Well, I had a Puffin, and I talked to you about this earlier.
Yep.
Like I had the Puffin, and it was so overwhelmingly good and so overwhelmingly above my head for what it could do that I didn't feel I could do justice giving it a video. Like I felt like I was actually going to do a negative by doing a video on it, if that makes
sure
sense.
But like I'm just saying, like if you told me like, hey, let's keep it under $1,000, I'd say like let's go buy like a Hammond metal chassis from Mauser and a Hammond 269EX power transformer, and let's follow these DIY instructions on how to build a single gain stage tube, line stage tube pre-circuit with a volume pot. And so you have like one input in, toggle switch for like or two inputs in with a toggle switch, and like one input out. And you had like Shannon Parks Puffin as your second input. That idea would sonically compete with many $6,000 pre's.
No, I agree with that. Yeah.
Because you'd have the harmonic texture of a good tube, classic tube pre sound. And then you'd have the Puffin that has this it doesn't have an EQ function, it has this tilt function where you can change the bass versus treble cutoff point. And then features. And then it does it also does the click pop delete, so that it takes away all the clicks and pops out of the record. And that would be so advanced thinking as an idea. And then I would put it on a tube amp, because I see zero point in using solid state amps.
Yeah, definitely.
Because I don't like paperweights 20 years later. Now, like if we talk about budgetary considerations, I'd go buy Class D amps from either Bel Canto, or I would get like New Force Encore DIY kits, for the Encore N400 DIY kits, or the New Force off the shelf kits, and I would use those happily and shut up. And I those are like legitimate ideas, but you have to like kind of just make sure that they're compatible with single-ended sources. That's like their only kind of quirk. They have to have a buffer built into them to handle single-ended sources. But that's not my idea of a good time, right? So if you back into this differently, I think two pre's are like the ultimate goal. Why don't you do that, Justin? Well, I
We're
build
working
amps that
on
have A, I'm working on it. B, I build most of my amps, except for the Zions,
it.
uh, like where the Red October and the Black Pearl are really sort of harmonically neutral because of their very classic 300B DHT sound, so they don't have that sort of mid-range bump. Um, you know, the Zion is like this very true to source true. It doesn't put any spin on the ball. It doesn't have like that three. It has the 3D texture, but not the extra meat, perhaps.
I got you.
The house sound though is very dense mid-range, typically for amps and sound. And so though I like it dense, um, I get away with having, as long as I have, because I use hyper efficient speakers, as long as my pre is quiet, because my amplifiers have to be quiet.
Mhm.
So I had this wonderful comment that was given to me recently by Acora, the owner of Acora, and he said, like, I was listening to the Casablanca she sent me, and they're like, crawl inside of them quiet. They're
Oh,
like,
wow.
they're not on. Check if they're on quiet.
Make sure.
And that's like such a good compliment,
Mhm.
And this is this amp that like doesn't compress and does all these wonderful good things, and it's pretty it's musical, but it doesn't like collapse on people,
Mhm.
So like if it's 60 watt tube amp that's,
It's pretty impressive.
all these
Yeah.
good things. But like if the pre was noisy, you would hear it in the amp. And so the problem with tube pre's is they tend to be noisy.
Mhm. So how do you resolve that kind of thing? Right.
You don't use them.
Don't use
That's I mean and I think that's what like modern tube manufacturers really struggle with, this idea is to collapse the noise floor. They utilize solid state components.
to kind of get that, yeah, to get the, like you're saying, add the computer component rather than sticking to the original sound kind of sound.
Right. And so like when I finally build one, it's going to be like, it is what it is, and whatever its noise floor is I'm going to accept and shut up.
Yeah, I gotcha. Fair enough.
You know.
That's what you gotta do.
Right. But like I think that having something that gives me the voltage that's quiet, because my amps are already sort of mid-range dense, is okay. I The problem with solid state amps as a general rule is the retained value is so low 5 and 10 years out.
Yeah, they're constantly churning through.
Well, they're cracked. The value is
Yeah, so
collapsing.
that's what I meant. Like you as soon as you get to it, that's like everything right these days, especially as soon as you get this new age stuff, it's like the value of the one prior is like nixed in half at least.
Right. And so it doesn't mean it's not sonically relevant. It's just the question of like, if you're going to do that, then the Class Ds at 400 watts are kind of interesting choices, right? Or like the Vidars are interesting choices. But if I'm going to do big power, then I want big texture. But if I'm going to do anything normative power, then I do want texture.
Yeah.
If I'm going to do anything under 60 watts, I want texture.
You want life to it. You want some yeah.
Or let me say this: if I'm doing like 60 watts, like it being quiet and having texture inherently to it is kind of what I want already. Like no extra spin, I guess is what I was trying to say. Where if it's already big power but has no life, like if it's I don't mean this meanly, but like if it's a NAD with that's like the super huge power, but not known to really put a lot of their own flavor on things.
Yeah, it's very neutral.
Right?
Well, define neutral, but yeah.
Then I think having something imbue some character is helpful.
I agree with that.
And then a tube pre is like an absolute.
Yeah, I can feel it. Yeah, that's how I feel. I mean, that's what I feel about this Ellicott. for sure. It helps whenever I feel like that. Like when I feel like there's no life to something, I can throw that in there and make it get some life
Well,
to it.
so as an example, like as an interesting one, like the LA kit, we upgraded the capacitors, the coupling
Mhm,
caps, so they have a little bit more bandwidth,
mhm,
and the op amp that we used is upgraded, so it's a little quieter, a little bit more, But the op amp, the only time you use the op amp is if you're using the phono stage.
mhm.
Otherwise, it's a straight up tube pre,
Cooper, yeah, which is ridiculously good.
right?
On this one, yeah, it's fantastic. That's one of my favorites so far.
Right.
For from what I've heard, I've only heard so many, but yeah. All right.
Yeah, but I mean, it doesn't have all those extra complexities that other more full range, full featured things would have.
Agreed. I mean, it. I'm looking at it right now. It's fantastic. I mean, it's very easy to get along with, easy plug and play, and for me, who's that way, it works great.
Mhm.
Um, I'm probably not going to Can Jam. Sorry, Adam. New York City. Sorry. But there's another good question. Sam Shao asked, and we already kind of talked about it before. You mentioned it prior. And this is the last question. We got to go. My
Yep.
daughter's in
My
the
wife
bath,
looked
but
at me. She went like this.
I know my wife same thing. I hear. So real quick, just real fast. This is for Justin, and you already mentioned it already, but it says, Justin, what are your thoughts on the Devin Ojas and what he's doing in the space? And you already mentioned you're already getting some plans in from him. So
So Devin is bringing an entirely different consumer. Uh, he's brought different people to us. He's expanded the tent,
which is
and
magic.
which is incredible. And some of the pushback you get is like that they're not audiophiles. It's like, yeah, but they're consumers of music.
And that is what matters.
100%. And so and any frustrations people have about it is that, like, you don't like because they don't look like you, because they're not old and white or some stupid shit like that. I find that as a complete frustration, because it's like it should be that they came wanting to listen to music. And I mean, like, Devin doesn't, you know, Devin listens to like music I don't even listen to. He listens to like straight up jazz. Like, he's got a jazz collection unlike I've ever seen. Like I like I like straight up jazz. That man, like he's got jazz.
He loves jazz.
He loves jazz. But he also has taken like the tea ceremony and listening to a higher level. Like, all of us have a tea ceremony to our listening at some level, but he's really documented it, documented his own tea ceremony for us all to see.
Which is
And I
cool.
think that that's also really, really special. I think he also has helped. There's a subset of culture that I wasn't as familiar with, even though, like, at one point I lived in a loft. Loft living and the considerations of how you construct your stereo and your space is different. And it's really interesting to see what that means, what true, like, urban living means for consumption of music and having a stereo. I think it's really kind of a cool idea, because it's like, he takes these very old big speaker ideas and he makes them consumable, and it feels less threatening for some reason. Like, where like an old JBL might have had its own value proposition history for these people. His speaker has a new history,
Which is
and so it has a new adoption point for these people, and it isn't threatening to them. And that's so, like, I love that. And so, like, I've
that's
seen
amazing.
the art house bookshelf speaker. I'm doing one. My version is like in a black stain, with a matte clear finish. And I'm doing like a slight riser on it, and it's like going to be super cool. But I've seen ones that were done with bumper stickers. I saw ones that have done with wallpaper. I've seen ones
Mhm.
where people did with crayons. And the fact that people took it as upon an expression of themselves and their own personality is something that like we don't see enough of. And I actually like that.
Yeah. Inclusivity. Like I think
Uh-huh.
we need more of it because that's how you expand the hobby. That's how you expand growth. That's how you expand, you know, new technology, even like people, because then people will start pushing on different avenues and pushing on different things and wanting to hear things a different way. And some things are going to fail and some things are going to excel, like at the end of the day. But I mean, like I love that as well. Like I think music is an inclusive thing. So why try to restrain it?
I'll
So
be right up, guys.
yeah, same. I can hear them. They're ready to go. But
I
anyways,
mean,
that's
I'll give you an example. So, and then I gotta go, guys. I'm sorry,
yeah.
and
No, I
and,
gotta
and
go too.
I
So
I really am grateful for everybody allowing me to talk. Parts Express does this whole meetup in Dayton, Ohio. It's a
Mhm.
huge, wonderful, super cool thing. And Parts Express does these knockdown kits.
Mhm.
And I'm not saying that they should compete with Devon, but like they should do a collab with Devon, and Devon should do a Parts Express kit
And just
that, yeah, because Devon's kits use these things called cabaneos, so
mhm.
they get fastened together in a really really cool way that
Mhm.
makes it so like you don't have to have clamps and nails and screws and
Yeah.
and Parts Express being like the or like Matasound is another example could learn a lot about making their products more accessible through Devon.
Which would be cool. Like, let's get people in the hobby. Let's make it happen.
Uh-huh. I mean,
I
I'd love
agree.
to also see like at Expona Devon build one of his kits and do a seminar on
That would be cool.
it.
That would be cool. That would be cool. Huh. You should well, you gotta come. You should tell them, hey, you should do this.
I should, yeah. I mean, I mean, Devon's flying at a very high level. I mean, I don't know that I don't know my idea is probably too pedestrian, but like hopefully big people have big ideas that they'll share with him.
Fair enough. Maybe he's listening. We'll get it.
Yeah, maybe. But I'm
All
just
right.
saying, like Parts Express or Matasound, Devon Ohas collab would be super dope. Or like a Foztex, like modifying the Foztech horn kit that's out of
Mhm.
Matasound to be like Devon's version would be
That'd be sick.
super cool.
Yeah, agreed. They can make a cool little kit, easily accessible to the masses, and then just
Hmm.
entry points. That's what matters. Entry points. Getting more
Yeah,
people into the hobby. So
yeah.
agreed. Well, with that, Justin, thank you so much for jumping on with me and all that fun stuff. It's always super fun and pleasurable, enjoyable conversation with you.
Thanks, man. It's always nice to see you. Thanks so much, guys.
All right. Cheers, everybody, and thanks for joining. And we'll catch you on the next one.
Awesome. Thanks.
All done.
What'd you think, man?
It was great.
When I don't know what the retention or participation was, but
It was averaging out about 10 to 20
cool.
per hour,
Whatever.
so which is really good.
That's awesome.
Maintained. So, and then we'll probably get probably a couple hundred, if not 1,000 plus on the full end, back end.
That's awesome. Would you shoot me the video version when you have a chance?
Will do. I will cancel it out and then I'll edit it out once we get done.
Awesome. And hopefully, like I think it was good that we covered like 80% other topics.
Agreed. It was, yeah, dude. We I think that was a fun one. That was a very on brand for myself and you. Just
Cool, man.
chatting
Thank
about
you.
good stuff. All right,
Hey,
Justin.
man. Thank you so much. Good night.
Cheers, bro. Night.